I think there's critique from both the right and the left of feminism for this reason. It seems to address the concerns of a small minority of wealthy, mostly wealthy or upper class, college educated women who have careers rather than jobs, for example.
Feminism addresses the concerns of educated white women. Couldn't see that one coming, could you? You know, this is an example of the women fighting amongst themselves, of course, trying to virtue signal or out virtue signal each other. Yeah, well, feminism was started by upper class white women. All the women who have been the leaders of feminism have all had the luxury of time on their hands because they've been upper middle class white women. So of course it's only going to address their concerns.
It seems like there are a lot of people who are left out of that, and when you talk about sort of positive role models for masculinity, I think the natural next question is what happens when boys don't have that? When women don't have those kinds of role models, whether they're husbands or at least, committed boyfriends, somebody who's committed, a man who's committed to helping raise his sons and daughters, but it seems that sons really need that role model. I mean, what has been the impact of feminism on the family for, let's say, the majority, probably the majority of people, but people who aren't wealthy, college-educated, career-oriented. And I think, like I said, I think the left also has that critique. It's called white feminism, right? So I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah, one of the feminists that I quoted in the book, her critique of Betty Friedan was Bell Hooks, who's one of those black feminists. But so it's a huge subject. We have created a caste system in America where the upper third, the people who go to college, tend to follow what sociologists call the success sequence. They tend to get educated, get a job, get married, and have children in that order. And by the way, they tend to stay married. The statistics about 50% of marriages ending in divorce, not among the educated. They tend to stay married. That wasn't true in 1980, but it has become true in recent decades.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that those educated women are staying married is due in part to MGTOW. It's recently the relationship coaches, the sociologists who are interested in this sort of thing, they are advising, the advice is, I should say, generally, if you're in a relationship, stay in it, because the dating scene is shit and you're not likely to find another partner anytime soon if your marriage does break up. So the college-educated women who are in relationships are staying in the relationships most of the time. Now, obviously they do get divorced, but the divorce rate has dropped in that demographic, as this woman's saying, due in part to MGTOW, but also due in part to the skewing of the genders in the college intake. So fewer men are going to college, fewer men are graduating, and of course the women who are graduating will marry up due to hypergamy. So again, the women have got themselves in this position. MGTOW are out of it, thank goodness. And if they've got themselves in that position, they're the ones who've got to try and get out of it, in my opinion. They've done the work to get in there. They're our equals. Get out of it yourselves.
Whereas people in the other two-thirds of America, people without college degrees, and especially those who drop out of high school, they tend to have children before they get married. Lots of women in that cohort don't even feel that there are many men around who could be husbands. They look at the men that they see, and they're kind of wastrels. You know, they're not earning money, and they're not. I was just talking to a makeup lady just the other day at a TV studio where I was talking about this book, and of course we talked about the topic of my book, and she talked about how hard it is to find a man who is willing to work as hard as she works.
Yeah, they need to change the parlance here and be a lot more honest about what they're talking about. What they should be changing the word husband or man. I can't find a man. What they should be saying is, I can't find an ATM or a wallet. I just can't marry a wallet these days. Where are all the good wallets gone? You know, I push the buttons, but the money doesn't come out of the ATM. What's happening? You know, they need to just be a lot more honest about what it is they're talking about. Because, you know, a hairdresser, there's plenty of men in her socio-economic group, but she's not interested in those men, is she? She's interested in the ATMs and the wallets. So just be a lot more honest, you know, change the parlance. It's not hard. You know, you make up words like mansplaining. Just change your parlance around and be a lot more honest about what you're talking about. Stop with the hypocrisy.
And so how did that happen? Well, one of the things that we know is that when boys and girls are raised by single parents, it's much harder on the boys than on the girls. The boys, when they reach adulthood, are much less likely to be employed. They're less likely to go to college or to be ambitious. They're more likely to go to jail. They're more likely to have problems with alcohol and drugs. The girls have problems too. They're more, compared with girls who grow up with a father and mother, no question. But for boys in particular, the fatherlessness that has been entrenched over the last several decades has been devastating.
Well, again, there's no sympathy from MGTOW. You feminists have got yourselves into this position. You've got the men out of the homes, and you've made divorce like the same as writing a check. You've absolutely fucked men over with the child support and the divorce courts, and you've got yourselves to blame for it. So stop whinging and whining and carrying on like fucking numpties and do something about it. Because you're the ones with all the power, the lobbying power in government. It's like men's groups who are talking about this sort of thing, like the MRA, for example, haven't got a snowball's chance in hell of even being listened to in any forum whatsoever. So don't bother coming to men saying that it's our fault or that we've got to do something about it, because we've tried, it doesn't work, and we're out of here. So, you know, the majority of households in the West are single parent, and the majority of those parents are women. So you've only got yourselves to blame. So no sympathy, and stop fucking whinging and whining about it. Sick of it.
And it's a vicious cycle because they didn't grow up with a male role model. They didn't grow up with the unique things that fathers bring to the picture. So therefore they're not able to step up and be the kind of pillars of families themselves. Let me talk for just a minute about some of the uniqueness of fathering and mothering, because I stress this because I think we've gotten away from that, and it's really interesting. So fathers and mothers bring different things to parenting, and one of the things that has been noticed in the literature is that fathers have a natural tendency to roughhouse with their little boys. And it turns out that the roughhousing is incredibly important for a boy's development of self-control. That if they don't get that, they don't learn how to moderate their aggressiveness, and they don't learn a lot of really when to stop. And they don't learn some really important lessons about life that then can get them into trouble as they get to be adolescents and big and so forth.
The exact same thing can be said about women today, with the lack of fathers in the home. You've got the women who have got absolutely no fucking boundaries, no morals, they're uncontrollable, they're absolutely running amok, and no one's questioning it, no one's stopping it. It's all boys are the problem, boys are the fucking problem. When you've got absolutely ridiculous behaviour from young women with no boundaries, and if a man is to make any kind of comment on it, it's misogyny or sexist in some way, or you're oppressing women in some way, or whatever the fucking flavour of the month is with feminists regarding this. So stop with the boys are the problem in society and all the rest of it. It's not boys, it's women. It's the solo mothers and the feminists who are getting the results that they've planned to get. Make no mistake about it, the feminism planned to destroy the nuclear household. And they've achieved their goal. And this is what you've got as a result. So fuck off with blaming boys. It's ridiculous.
Also, children who have a father in their home, who grow up with their fathers, have a lot more, boys and girls, have much more self-confidence, are much readier to face the world than children who don't. And again, the boys are looking for ratification of their manliness, often in bad ways, when they don't have a father.
So we're talking now about the needs of boys, but to what extent, especially as a mother, do you find that ideas of strict equality that feminism brings to the table and the attendant problems, or arguably attendant problems with family breakdown, how much of that is the needs of adults, or I shouldn't even say the needs, the desires of adults, slamming into the concrete needs of children and families?
Yeah, just before she answers that one, I've got had a few thoughts recently regarding COVID and what happened, what the response to COVID looked like. So previously, in previous generations to modern society, the parents used to sacrifice for the future of their children. In other words, you'd get the man, the father and mother, working hard to, put food on the table to provide for their children, and in terms of a better education, clothing, what have you, better nutrition, etc., etc., so that the children had the best start in life that the parents could provide for them, and it took sacrifice from the parents. So the adults were sacrificing for the future of for their children's future. And what happened with COVID is, especially around the education side of things, was the children's future was sacrificed for the safety of the children, of the parents. All right, so the whole generation's had its education just destroyed over the last 2 years. Like it's a drastic thing. There's the brilliant children will get through rather fairly unscathed, I should think. But there's a whole block there right in the middle where if their education's interrupted like that, they're behind for years, and you look at the bigger picture, and you've got solo mothers bringing up the majority of children today, and women in general are risk averse and they want safety. And so society's kind of flipped on its head, where the parent, I'm not going to say parents, but the parent is not willing to sacrifice their safety regarding COVID for the future of the children. And this is women. And it's female nature to be selfish like this. You know, they talk about, male nature. Well, males they take risk. And so if men had been in charge, I believe they would have looked at the risks and they would have said, well, the children aren't at risk from COVID. Right, we are at risk from the children getting COVID and coming back and giving it to us, but I'm going to take that risk because I want my child to have a better future. Whereas the women say, oh no, look, that's all bad. I can't, I've got to be safe, so therefore my children can't go to school. And most of the school teachers are women. So I mean, this is what a female-dominated world looks like. It's absolute chaos, and will jeopardise the future of entire generations just to try and mitigate some kind of risk that wasn't even really was thrown out of all proportion. Okay, you had Buckley's chance of dying of COVID, and I actually got COVID, and it was a bad cold. So it's no. I think the women have really set humans on a downward spiral, and we haven't seen the last of it yet. It's just going to keep going, I think.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that kids need is married parents. That is overwhelmingly the thing they need. So if you work, you don't work, whatever, if your parents are married, the kids are more likely than not to turn out just great. But regarding the whole family balance thing, one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book is that I felt really happy with my own choice to cut back when my kids were young. This made me happy. I loved being a mother. It's not for everyone, but a lot of women agree with me, and I have the data in the book. Women who have a choice, for example, 76% of married women prefer either part-time work or no work outside the home when their kids are young. It's a pretty large percentage. And there's a lot of worry that women are being harmed by this, and I sort of think that's the wrong way to look at it. If you make career sacrifices to be with your kids, or your husband does, or somebody does, you've gained so much in the health and well-being of your family, which is, in the end, the most important thing in life.
Well, yes. I probably agree with most of what she's said there. But the 50% of the families, 50% or more, only have a single parent due to feminism. So you can't just sit there as an educated white woman married with 2 kids, I think it is, and tell your sisterhood, so to speak, that they should be getting married and having children, sacrificing their careers for it. It's like just it doesn't apply to the majority of households today, and that's due to feminism. So it's just like, it's all well and good to have these ideas, but they're just so far from reality, and not really providing any kind of answer to the problems that we're seeing, that you might as well not have written your book, sweetheart. It's absolute fucking rubbish, again, from the feminists.
So you know, you may earn less over a lifetime. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Women do earn less over their lifetimes than men because they choose to work less. But that doesn't mean they're the losers. It just means that they've made trade-offs and they've made decisions about putting the welfare of their kids first. And I think that's very admirable, and I think we need more of it.
So you mentioned the pay gap, and there's a lot of research out there that, for example, for young, unmarried, childless women, actually they make more than men, 7% more on average. But those average statistics don't really dig into what it means to have equal pay for equal work.
The US Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, prohibits sex-based wage discrimination between men and women in the same establishment who perform jobs that require substantially equal skill, effort and responsibility under similar working conditions. I draw your attention to the date, 1963. It establishes the minimum wage. No employer having employees subject to any provisions of this section shall discriminate within any establishment in which such employees are employed between employees on the basis of sex by paying wages to employees in such establishment at a rate less than the rate at which he pays wages to employees of the opposite sex. So it's a gender neutral act. You've got to pay men and women the same rate for the same pay in the same establishment for equal work on jobs, the performance of which requires equal skill, effort and responsibility, and which are performed under similar working conditions. You can't get more fairer than that, right? The same job, same work conditions, same skill level, same pay rate, men and women. It doesn't specify, it's gender neutral, right? So, but it definitely is about gender. So men and women are paid the same amount of money for doing the same job since 1963. Now, if you read down further, it does say there are provisions there for rewarding merit-based systems, quantity or quality of production. So there's the seniority one. So if you're a chief bottle washer, you get paid more than the Indian bottle washer. But you've got a merit system there, you've got a system that rewards effort. There's provisions within the Act, Equal Pay Act, to reward your employees. And that's a good thing. My employees are told that if they reach certain thresholds of money coming into the business through their actions, they will get a bonus, a 10% bonus. So that's the way I work. If you're going to help me make money, I'm going to make money, help you make money. You're not on a fixed income. There's a base income. You'll never go below a certain threshold, but if you're willing to put the effort in, you'll get more money. That's the way I operate with my employees. So that's a merit-based system as far as I'm concerned. You get a bonus on a daily basis. It's not on a weekly thing. So I have a good day, you have a good day. If I have a good day, you have a good day. Can't say fairer than that. So what my point is, it's the Equal Pay Act of 1963. That's 50 fucking years of equal pay. So stop with there's a wage gap myth, because if there is one, you're making it up, or you haven't got your act together in 50 fucking years. So whatever, piss off.
Right, it doesn't talk about, we're talking about a vast array of different career choices, different major choices in college, different hours, demands, salary history, all kinds of things. So there is the argument on the right that essentially the demands for equal pay that come from the feminist left are, instead of now fighting against the patriarchy, which no longer has much power, they're actually fighting against the individual choices of women like yourself who made this choice that made you very happy. But in the statistics in the Obama administration, your salary is part of the 77 cents on the dollar, right?
Is. That's right. You know, there are other areas where personal choice is, I think, at work. So, for example, women dominate the helping professions. You know, they are like 80% of the veterinary students right now are women. And they are edging men in a lot of fields in medicine, like pediatrics and other family medicine. They are attracted to professions like psychology that involve interpersonal interactions. Men are more drawn to technical subjects. There's a quote in here that I totally love. It was from a woman engineer who explained why she left engineering and went into another field. And she said, you know what, all the special programs in the world and all of the special efforts to get women into tech is not going to make me really care how my dishwasher works. And that's how a lot of people do feel. So anyway, there's an element of people finding their own way and people making free choices that gets described as some sort of coercion. And I think it probably isn't. I think that people, especially in richer first world societies, you see this in Scandinavia, you see it in Europe, where women have choices. They tend not to go for the biggest bucks, but to go for flexibility, you know, flex time, working with people or animals, working with things that they find meaningful, whereas men have different priorities. And you don't see that in places in poorer countries, where the need to make the money is more urgent.
Yeah, so what these women are saying is that their social engineering that feminism has undertaken has been a complete failure due to human nature. And you know, that puts paid to the current feminist thought that gender is a social construct when it's actually biological. And so, you know, now we've got the LGBTQI intersectional feminists double down basically on feminism, and you know, it's not going to get any better. It's not like feminists are going to change course anytime soon or decide that they need to ditch the feminism. They're just going to just run everything into the ground by the looks of it. And then she makes the point at the end there where, you know, that's the first world affluent white women basically who have lots of choices in life, and so they're able to do whatever they want. Whereas in a poorer country, you know, making money comes before luxuries like what do I want to do with my life. So it is, feminism really doesn't address any real world issues at all, and it's definitely not making the world a better place. So it needs to be stopped, it needs to be ditched. As a MGTOW, it doesn't really affect me, I've got to admit that, except that some of the laws that I live under are based on feminism. And of course there's the Me Too movement. So in that regard, you know, it does affect me, but I know how to handle myself. So yeah, get rid of the feminism.
Right. So there have been some comparisons on pay, for example, that in Rwanda, pay for women actually is increasing very quickly. And it's funny because they compared Rwanda to a series of other countries like Sweden and Norway that have made enormous efforts to try to equalize the salaries and career tracks of men and women by, for example, forcing paternity leave. And it was interesting because, of course, Rwanda has that imbalance because there's a generation of men missing.
So why is there a generation of men missing in Rwanda? Yeah, you're not going to tell us why? Could be a war happened there. Could be the Rwandan civil war. Who knows? But they didn't. The men just didn't walk away, did they? No, there's a whole generation of men missing because they're dead. Yeah, and you find it interesting. Compare that with Sweden and Switzerland and all the rest of it there. Death of men, you see, doesn't make any. It's not of any. It's not even worth talking about with these feminists. They're quite happy with it.
So, how much where does the sort of ideological impulse stop and individual choices begin, right? We heard that the personal is political. That was part of the feminist call, the second wave feminist call, Betty Friedan, and the other feminists that you mentioned in the 60s and 70s. Ought there to be a line between the political and the personal? Or are women's choices inherently political and subject to sort of larger societal debate?
Can you believe the level of hypocrisy, the level of hubris and conceit in that statement? You know, women's decisions are inherently political and should be the subject of societal debate. It leaves me speechless to think that. I mean, how can you say that with a straight face? That an individual woman makes a decision and it's inherently political and should be debated in open society. I mean, it's just the concept is unbelievably conceited, and you know, it goes to the point that they make about feminism coming from pampered white women with too much time on their hands. You know, this to have got to that level of hubris as in a movement, a feminist movement, where each woman's decision is inherently political, is unreal. But then she brings up all the second wave feminists, you know, second and third wave. You know, and previously we've heard that all their ideas are just junk science and anecdotes. So what are we discussing? You know, like it's just, if your foundation is no good, your building won't stand, and that's what feminism is. It's built on sand, it's bullshit, and it's just navel-gazing bullshit to get to the point now where any woman's decisions are inherently political. What a load of fucking crap. It's unreal. They're living in a delusional dream world, these women.
I just would love to see us get away from measuring women's progress and men's progress separately. I just think we are linked and our fates, as we said earlier, are connected. And to see it in terms of a competition between the sexes is very unhelpful and reductionist, and actually it doesn't teach us very much. I do think that, of course, there are instances where women are discriminated against in the workplace, and